So we've all seen that person online who always seems to be on holiday, traveling to new places each month. And whether you're going on a 2-week holiday or you're going traveling for a number of months, you want to save a bit of money without compromising on your experiences. Me too. Hi, I'm Rosie, and on this channel we explore how to manage your money whilst living your true dream life. Yes, it can be done, and I'm going to show you how. So let's get into how to save money whilst traveling. Here are some of my tips from traveling to Greece, Vietnam, and Australia that have allowed me to save a huge chunk of money. And these can be used anywhere you go. First of all, how do you even get enough money to be able to afford that holiday in the first place? In the UK, the average person spends around £1,800 per year on holidays. And for many people, the cost of that 2-week holiday could be the same amount that they earn in that monthly paycheck, or a significant proportion of it. This then puts a pressure on the rest of the month when you return from that holiday and discover that you have no more money left to tide you over for the rest of the month. So how do you combat this? I've been using a holiday fund for the past 3 years and I absolutely love it. Not only do I get rid of any money worries when the holiday comes around because I've been spreading out those payments, but I also find I'm actually more excited for the holiday because I've had something to look forward to and I've seen the amount of money ticking up in my savings account. I personally use the Monzo savings pot feature, which allows me to automate my savings and transfer the money into that savings pot ready for the holiday. The added benefit of using Monzo is that it has a great exchange rate, so I can spend directly from my Monzo account when I'm abroad without having to worry about any extra fees. So how does this holiday sinking fund work? So if you reckon you spend around the average of £2,000 a year on holidays, then all you need to do is divide this figure by 12 months, and then you get the amount you need to be saving each month. Then all you need to do is set up an automated payment of around £170 into this account, so all of the saving starts happening in the background. Plus, it also means you have a rough idea of how much you want to spend on holidays each year, so you don't go crazy and spend all of your money and go completely over budget. Let me know where you're planning that next holiday to in the comments below. Booking flights. So this is a big one that I paid more attention to as I've got older. You need to consider the total cost of transportation and not just the flight. It's very easy to get swept up in all of these different cheap flight deals, but you need to consider how much it will cost you to actually get to and from the airport at each end. And if you're flying in the early hours of the morning, will you be able to take public transport, or will you need to book a taxi or overnight accommodation? I've worked in digital analytics for a number of years, and basically every single click that you make on a website is tracked. So when you're booking a flight on a website, the company is tracking how many times you've looked at that particular flight route and for which dates. They understand that the more often you've looked, the more likely you are to book these flights. They can increase the prices slightly and you're more likely to pay that higher amount. To combat this, try using incognito mode when searching and booking those flights so they can't identify you and hike up those prices. If you're a more spontaneous traveller and you're flexible on destination and when you want to go, then try booking last-minute flights. Airlines cut their prices closer to the date of departure because it's better for them to get a cheap seat sale than it is for them to have a completely empty seat. And a bonus tip, check if you can gain points. The British Airways have a shopping portal where you can collect airline points when you're shopping online at certain retailers. So it's worth having a quick check and see if you can get points for something that you're already buying. Accommodation. Now, I'm usually a big culprit of falling into the expensive accommodation trap. Usually, I'm a little last minute with booking accommodation, and when I finally get round to it, I found the prices have increased. So one of my top tips is to book early and find places with free cancellation. This way, you have the flexibility to change your mind or rearrange your schedule closer to the time your plans change, but you have locked in a lower price nice and early. Plus, it also takes some of the last minute stress off when you're trying to book the accommodation the week before you fly. Now, there are a number of websites and apps that you can use for accommodation that take the prices down considerably and allow you to have a little bit more of a local experience. Now, everyone's heard of Airbnb, but there's also couchsurfing.com, HomeSwap, or house sitting. So couchsurfing.com, what is it? You can basically stay on someone's sofa or in their spare room for free. Now, I was quite hesitant about this at first, but I did this in New York and I had the best experience. My friend and I stayed in a really cool flat in Brooklyn, and the hosts even showed us around the local area, going into some really cool bars and cafes that we otherwise would have never visited. In terms of safety, we met the hosts in their local bar first, so we could get to know them and they could get to know us. So I definitely recommend doing this. We got them a nice gift to say thank you, but the cost of the accommodation was completely free, which made such a big difference in a high cost of living city like New York. Now, home swapping, what is it? Now, there's a couple that I've heard of called Home Swapper or Home Exchange. So you live in someone's home whilst they stay in yours. It is free accommodation for both of you and saves you having to rent out your house while you're away. I haven't done this myself, but my friend stayed in someone's place in Turkey whilst they lived in hers in London. So home sitting or pet sitting. There's a few websites that seem to be gaining popularity for this: Trusted House Sitters, Rover, or Mind My House. I've just joined Trusted House Sitters whilst I'm away in Australia, and basically what I'll be doing is looking after someone's pet whilst they're away and staying in their house rent-free. Now there's a couple of other websites that I've heard travellers recommend to me called Workaway or Help Stay. For these, you can basically get free accommodation and sometimes even food in exchange for volunteering on a project. Now this varies from individuals where you could be gardening or helping with the house or looking after someone elderly, to community projects where you're working in a bigger group and living in shared accommodation. Now you may not necessarily want to do this for a shorter holiday, but if you're doing a bit more long-term traveling, then this is a great way to meet people and also save a bunch of money on your accommodation. Let's look at cards. So which cards do I use? So to simplify this, I use credit cards when booking trips so I can gain points for those bookings. You could also use a debit card and this wouldn't be a problem. And then for when I'm abroad, I make sure I use a spending card with a really good exchange rate and no additional fees. Now some cards offer free travel insurance, but be sure to check this, and if not, book full comprehensive travel insurance to cover you for the time that you're away. If you tend to go on holiday quite frequently during the year, you'll probably save a lot more money by going for an annual plan rather than booking travel insurance for each individual trip. And lastly, check whether the country you're traveling to is predominantly cash-based or whether cards are used quite frequently. So for example, when I went to Vietnam, most of the transactions were cash. So what I did is I went to a currency exchange before I flew out to exchange some of this money at a good rate, and it also meant that as soon as I arrived in the country, I had some cash and I could start paying for things without running around to try and find a cash point. Food. If you're anything like me, then this is a big part of your trip. So firstly, eat like a local. Try and avoid eating near touristy areas because this is where the price of the food is going to be much more expensive and probably less tasty too. Look for where the locals are eating and you can ask your accommodation host where they might recommend. And another tip is to cook or prepare some of your meals. So I find if I'm away for a week or 2 weeks, if I'm eating out every single meal or even 2 meals a day, I find that I stop enjoying the food as much because I'm just not getting the nutrients that I need. Activities. So I absolutely love free walking tours. I try and book these around my second day of the holiday so I can get an overview of the city that I'm staying in, the history, and some of the key buildings and things to see. Now these aren't completely free as you are expected to tip at the end, but usually this is around £10. So it's really not that much for a couple of hours of being shown around the city, and it helps so much with knowing what to do for the rest of your holiday. Another thing, wander around the city and soak up the atmosphere. You don't need to be rushing from one touristy location to another touristy location. This saves on transport and tourist entrance fees. Navigation. So before you go on holiday, check your mobile phone contract to see if you've got roaming and how much it will cost per day. If the roaming costs are really expensive, you could consider getting a local SIM card or an eSIM so you can start to reduce that slightly. Because when you're in a new country or a new city, it is very useful to have maps so you can navigate. And lastly, remember to get the travel vaccinations that you need. Now in the UK, you can actually get a number of the travel vaccinations provided for free on the NHS. This includes tetanus, diphtheria and polio, typhoid and hepatitis A. Getting these on the NHS saved me £115 versus going to a travel clinic, but make sure you allow plenty of time to get these booked in before you go away on holiday. Typically around 2 to 3 months is a good time frame, or you can just make sure that you're constantly up to date. And a great website to check which travel vaccinations you may need is Travel Health Pro. Now you're excited about booking that holiday to wherever you want to go. But going back to the first step, you need to start that savings pot so you can actually afford the holiday. Check out this video here to get saving and make that holiday a reality.